Have you ever felt like your kindness has become a quiet prison? Like every yes you say to others slowly becomes a no to yourself? Seneca once wrote, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Sometimes being nice isn't compassion. It's fear. Fear of conflict, fear of being seen as selfish, fear of being alone. You stay available, agreeable, even when it drains you. But here's the quiet truth. When you stop giving to those who only take, you don't lose people. You reveal them. Their silence, their distance, their coldness. It's not punishment, it's proof. Proof that your presence was never truly valued, only used. In Stoicism, we're taught to align our actions with virtue, not validation. So what happens when you finally choose peace over people-pleasing? When you stop being nice, not out of anger, but out of clarity? This isn't about becoming cold, it's about becoming free. Stay with me, because the final insight in this video isn't just philosophy. It might be the emotional shift you've needed all along. Number 1. They show their true colors. What really happens when you stop being overly nice to the wrong people, especially those who have grown far too comfortable taking your kindness for granted? You know the kind. They praise you when you're always available, always agreeable, always ready to say yes. To them, your selflessness is convenient, but the moment you draw a line, when you finally say no, when you begin protecting your peace instead of pleasing everyone, their tone changes, the smile fades, the compliments grow cold, and slowly their true character begins to surface. Here's a hard Stoic truth. The moment you set boundaries, the mask slips. People who once called you a good friend might guilt-trip you. They might criticize you or act like you've betrayed them. But what they're really upset about is this: they can no longer benefit from your silence, your time, or your endless compliance. As Epictetus said, if telling the truth makes someone angry, they never valued the truth to begin with. Likewise, if someone only respects you when you're bending over backward for them, they never truly respected you at all. They were loyal to your usefulness, not your essence. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman named Clara. In her circle, she was known as the reliable one. Need a ride to the airport? Ask Clara. Need someone to cover your shift? Plan the event? Stay late? Show up early? Clara always said yes, even when it cost her time, energy, sleep, or peace of mind. She wore her kindness like armor, hoping it would shield her from conflict or rejection. But one day, she hit a quiet breaking point. Not with anger, but with clarity. She began saying no without guilt. She stopped over-explaining herself. She turned down last-minute favors that always seemed urgent for others, but left her drained. And then the shift happened. Some people respected her more, but others, they went cold. One friend accused her of changing. Another stopped speaking to her entirely. At first, Clara felt guilt. She wondered, am I being selfish? But over time, the fog lifted, and she saw the truth. They weren't upset because she had changed. They were upset because she had stopped playing the role they needed her to play. So how do you deal with this? First, don't ignore the shift. Their reaction is revealing. When someone responds to your boundary with anger, distance, or manipulation, they're not showing you something new. They're finally showing you something real. That discomfort? It's information. Pay attention. Second, stand firm. Just because someone's upset doesn't mean you've done something wrong. In fact, their discomfort is often the cost of your growth. As Marcus Aurelius reminded us, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. You're not here to please everyone. You're here to live in alignment with your values. And finally, be grateful for the clarity. When people reveal their true nature, take it as a gift, not a loss. Because in letting go of those who only stayed for your compliance, you make space for those who respect your boundaries as much as your kindness. Being kind doesn't mean being a doormat. The wrong people will see your boundaries as rejection. The right people will see them as self-respect. So when you stop being nice to the wrong people, you don't lose connection. You lose the illusion. And that's not the end. It's the beginning of peace, of truth, of you choosing yourself without apology. Number 2, they lose power over you. Let's talk about what really happens when you stop being overly nice to the wrong people, especially those who quietly fed off your need to please. When you're always agreeable, constantly accommodating, and endlessly putting others before yourself, you may think you're being kind, but what you're really doing is handing over control. You let their moods dictate your responses. Their expectations shape your decisions. Their approval becomes your compass. And without realizing it, you become a character in someone else's script. But the moment you stop playing that role, when you stop catering to their ego, stop apologizing for having needs, and stop bending just to keep the peace, something powerful happens. They lose control. Here's the Stoic truth. Your constant niceness wasn't just generosity, it was permission. Permission for others to occupy your space without respect, to drain your energy without consequence, to mold your silence into submission. But the moment you begin choosing yourself, not with anger, but with clarity, they feel it. Because now they can't steer your emotions like before. They can't guilt you into yes, or shame you into silence. And for people who rely on control to feel secure, that shift is terrifying. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In other words, true freedom begins the moment you stop needing others to approve of your life. Because when your choices come from inner principle instead of outer pressure, no one can hold power over you. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Daniel, used to be the textbook nice guy. At work, he'd always cover extra shifts, never complain, never ask for credit. At home, he'd sacrifice his time, his rest, even his dreams, just to keep everyone happy. He wasn't living, he was surviving under the weight of everyone else's expectations. Why? Because he thought that saying yes was the path to peace. But peace bought through self-erasure isn't peace at all. It's quiet submission. One day, Daniel decided to shift. He didn't become angry. He became honest. He started saying no, calmly, respectfully, without long explanations. He stopped apologizing for taking space, for choosing differently, for being unavailable. And people noticed. A co-worker snapped, "You're not as helpful as you used to be." A family member said, "You've changed." But Daniel didn't flinch, because he finally understood. He hadn't changed. He had returned to himself. And as the guilt faded, a new feeling took its place. Freedom. He felt lighter, more focused, no longer chained to the emotional strings others used to pull. So how do you handle it when people start losing their grip on you? Simple. Stop explaining your strength. Own it. Let them feel the discomfort of your boundaries. It's not your job to ease their reaction to your growth. As Epictetus said, freedom is the only worthy goal in life, and freedom begins the moment you stop shrinking to fit someone else's comfort. When you stop being nice to the wrong people, they lose access to the version of you that kept them comfortable, and you gain access to the version of you that was waiting to breathe. That isn't selfish, it's sovereignty. Number 3. Your mental clarity returns. One of the most underrated benefits of no longer being overly nice to the wrong people is this: your mind begins to quiet. Not just a momentary relief, but a deep, lasting stillness, the kind that lets you see things for what they truly are. When you're constantly trying to please people who take more than they give, your inner world becomes noisy. You're always second-guessing. Did I say the wrong thing? Should I have said yes? Are they mad at me? That kind of thinking becomes a fog, subtle but suffocating, and often you don't even realize how heavy it's gotten until it begins to lift. Here's the Stoic truth. When you're too busy managing other people's emotions, you lose touch with your own. You start making choices out of fear. Fear of upsetting someone, fear of rejection, fear of being called selfish, and slowly, without noticing, you begin to trade your clarity for their comfort. But the moment you step back, when you stop over-apologizing, over-explaining and overthinking, you begin to see again. You return to yourself. Seneca once wrote, "If you wish to be happy, eliminate the things which disturb your peace." It's not complexity that clouds your mind, it's excess. Excess worry, excess guilt, excess people-pleasing. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman named Natalie. She was the one everyone relied on. Need a last-minute favor? Call Natalie. Going through a crisis? Natalie will stay up all night listening. She gave her time, her energy, even her sleep, all in the name of kindness. But deep down, Natalie wasn't okay. She was anxious, scattered, constantly carrying a mental checklist of who she might have disappointed. At night, her mind replayed every conversation, analyzing whether she had said or done the right thing. It wasn't compassion that was driving her, it was fear. Fear of being seen as unkind, fear of losing people. But one day, something shifted. She didn't get angry, she got clear. She began setting gentle boundaries. She stopped replying instantly to every message. She allowed herself to pause, to rest, to not be available all the time. And slowly, her thoughts began to settle. Her priorities sharpened. For the first time in years, she felt like her mind belonged to her again. So, how do you protect your mental clarity? Start by stepping away from the people who blur it. You don't owe unlimited access to those who misuse it. Then, practice silence. Not everything needs a reaction. Not every opinion needs a response. And most importantly, turn inward. Ask yourself, what do I need right now? Then honor that answer. Marcus Aurelius taught that we are disturbed not by events, but by our judgments about them. When you stop judging yourself through the lens of everyone else's needs, your mind clears. You remember who you are beneath the noise. At the end of the day, being overly nice to the wrong people doesn't just wear down your energy, it robs you of your clarity. But the moment you stop, truly stop, you reclaim something far more valuable than approval, your inner stillness. And in that stillness, you finally hear the one voice that matters most, your own. Number 4, you gain self-respect. There's a powerful shift that happens when you stop being overly nice to the wrong people. Something deeper than just setting boundaries or distancing yourself from toxicity. What truly changes is your relationship with the person in the mirror. You begin to gain self-respect. People-pleasing isn't just about being kind. It's about constantly silencing your own needs to keep others comfortable. You lower your voice so others can speak louder. You say yes when your heart is screaming no, just to avoid tension. But beneath that surface of harmony lies something painful. You're abandoning yourself. And every time you do, your self-worth slowly erodes. Here's the truth. Choosing peace over people-pleasing is one of the most self-respecting things you can do. Because peace isn't about avoiding conflict with others, it's about avoiding conflict within. It's protecting your inner space from being trampled by expectations that were never yours to carry. The moment you stop saying yes to things that don't align with your values, a quiet shift begins. You start seeing yourself with clearer eyes. You no longer question whether you're worthy of rest, respect, or boundaries. You begin to honor your limits like they matter, because they do. As Epictetus once said, respect yourself enough to walk away from anything that no longer serves you, be it a person, a habit, or a belief. That includes conversations that drain you, relationships that deplete you, and roles you were never meant to play. Self-respect isn't arrogance. It's alignment. It's understanding that your time, your energy, and your emotional well-being are not up for negotiation. And the more you respect yourself, the less tolerance you'll have for those who don't. Let me tell you about a man named Adam. For years, Adam was everyone's fixer, the reliable one. At work, he picked up the slack. In his family, he was the peacekeeper. Every "don't worry, I've got it" came at a personal cost. Lost sleep, sacrificed goals, mounting resentment. But he kept going because being the nice guy had become part of his identity. Then one day, Adam hit a quiet realization. Very few people showed up for him the way he showed up for them. That truth was heavy, but it was also freeing. He began making different choices, saying no with calm certainty, leaving messages unread when he needed rest, setting limits without guilt. Sure, some people didn't like it. A coworker called him less helpful. A relative said, "You've changed." But deep down, Adam knew they were right. He had changed. He was finally standing up, not against others, but for himself. So how do you build this kind of self-respect? First, stop apologizing for having needs. You're not an inconvenience, you're a human being. Second, make decisions that reflect your values, not just other people's comfort. And third, celebrate your growth, even when others don't. Because at the end of the day, when you stop being overly nice to the wrong people, you don't just create distance, you create depth, a deeper connection to your own worth. You stop shrinking, you stop settling, and slowly you start standing. And in that space, quiet, firm, and free, your self-respect begins to grow. Not loud, not flashy, but steady, unshakable. Number 5. They try to manipulate you back. When you stop being overly nice to the wrong people, especially those who quietly fed off your silence, your compliance, your need to keep the peace, don't expect a quiet goodbye. Some people don't walk away. They reach back, not out of love, but out of control. The moment you begin to pull away, to set firm boundaries, to say no without guilt, something unsettling happens. They start to shift. Not in a way that reflects growth, but in a way that reveals their desperation to restore the comfort they had at your expense. Suddenly, you'll hear phrases like, "You've changed," or "I guess you don't care anymore." Now they're the victim, painting your boundary as a betrayal. Their discomfort isn't about you being unkind. It's about them losing the version of you that made their life easier. Sometimes it's more subtle. They soften their tone. They appear reflective. They say things like, "I've been thinking," or "I just want things to be like before." And for a moment, it might feel like progress. But when you look closely, nothing fundamental has shifted. The patterns are the same. The apology lacks weight. What you're seeing isn't transformation. it's strategy. Because here's the hard truth. They're not sorry they crossed your boundaries. They're sorry they no longer benefit from them. When you create distance, you don't just change the relationship. You expose the foundation it was built on. People who truly care will respect the space you need. But those who relied on your silence as a tool of control will panic. They'll push harder, not because they miss your company, but because they miss the influence they had over you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The closer one is to truth, the more falsehood resists." And that couldn't be more relevant here. When you start living in alignment with your truth, when you stop over-explaining, when you choose peace over performance, when you say no and mean it, those who thrived in your self-denial will resist, not because you've become unkind, but because your clarity has disrupted their illusion of control. I once knew someone named Claire. For years, she had a friend who leaned on her for emotional support, constant validation, and one-sided loyalty. When Claire needed something in return, that friend vanished. But Claire said nothing. She didn't want to upset the balance. Until one day, she quietly stepped back. No drama, no accusations, just distance. And that's when it began. The guilt tripping. "I guess our friendship meant nothing." Then the charm. "I miss us, let's grab coffee." But Claire had changed, not emotionally, but philosophically. She had stopped confusing guilt with loyalty. She saw clearly now. It wasn't about missing her. It was about maintaining the dynamic that served them. And she didn't go back. So how do you respond when someone tries to manipulate you back into the role they once cast you in? You stay grounded. Their discomfort isn't a sign that you're wrong. It's proof that your boundary is working. You resist the urge to over-explain, because the more you justify your decision, the more ammunition you hand them to twist your truth. And most importantly, you learn to trust the discomfort. As the Stoics taught, resistance often reveals the path to growth, not away from it. At the end of the day, when you stop being nice to the wrong people, they will react. But their panic is not your responsibility. It's simply the unraveling of a script you've chosen to stop performing. And that's not cruelty, that's freedom. Number 6. You create space for genuine people. One of the most unexpected gifts of walking away from the wrong people is the quiet space they leave behind. At first, that space may feel like emptiness. Doubt creeps in. Did I do the right thing? But slowly, something shifts. As you release those who were only around for convenience, attention, or control, you create room for people who see you, not what you can do for them. True connection isn't loud or demanding. It's steady. It respects your boundaries, values your presence, and doesn't flinch when you say no. Seneca wrote, "Associate with those who make you better," and it's in this space that such people appear, not to fill a void, but to walk beside you, not ahead, not behind. I once knew someone named Eric, who gave endlessly to those who vanished the moment he needed support. When he stepped back, he feared isolation. But in that stillness, new voices entered, calmer, truer. Over time, his circle shrank, but his life deepened. Because when you stop being nice to the wrong people, you don't lose connection. You make space for the right ones to finally find you. Number 7. Your energy shifts. One of the most powerful and liberating transformations that happens when you stop being overly nice to the wrong people isn't loud. It's quiet, subtle at first, but you feel it deeply. Your energy shifts. When you spend your days pouring time, attention, and emotional effort into people who only take, those who dismiss your boundaries, manipulate your kindness, or vanish when you need them, you start to run on empty. You wake up tired, even if you've rested. You lose interest in what once lit you up. You feel disconnected from yourself, as if your life revolves around maintaining everyone else's comfort while slowly forgetting your own. But when you begin pulling back, when you stop overgiving, over-apologizing, and overextending, a shift begins. The fog lifts. You start waking up without the invisible weight of guilt, fear, and people-pleasing. And slowly, you begin returning to yourself. This is more than emotional relief. It's a reclaiming of power. Because as the Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "He who is not a slave to others' expectations is truly free." This shift is about freedom. The freedom to say no without guilt, to live without performing, to prioritize your own peace without asking for permission. When you stop living for validation, your energy no longer gets drained by the need to be liked. Instead, it flows into things that truly matter: your goals, your health, your inner clarity. Let me share a story. I once knew someone named Lila. She was everyone's go-to, always stepping up, always saying yes. On the surface, she seemed reliable, kind, strong. But beneath that was exhaustion, anxiety, a creeping sense of burnout she couldn't explain. Until one day, she decided to pause. Not to push people away, but to finally include herself in the equation. She began saying no calmly, pulled back from one-sided connections, and gave herself permission to rest. And slowly, something beautiful happened. Her energy returned. She began moving her body, picking up hobbies she'd abandoned, sleeping deeply for the first time in years. She wasn't exhausted just from existing anymore, because when you stop being overly nice to the wrong people, you don't just protect your peace, you start to feel alive again. If this message spoke to something deep within you, consider giving it a like. It helps this insight reach others who might need it too. And if you'd like more reflections like this, feel free to subscribe. No pressure, just an open invitation to keep growing together. Drop a quick "no more pleasing" in the comments if today's message resonated with where you are right now. Remember, setting boundaries isn't the end of kindness. It's the beginning of self-respect. You're not walking away from others, you're walking back to yourself. In the next video, we'll explore how to stay grounded when others push back against your growth. Until then, take a breath, stand tall, and trust that protecting your peace is the most powerful gift you can give yourself.